Fishing Intelligence, a fishing improvement podcast for the modern angler. What's up, guys, and welcome back to another episode of the Fishing Intelligence podcast. I'm your host, Jacob Jasonic, and on this week's episode, I am talking to Natalie Dillon of Natty up north. Her YouTube channel and Instagram are quickly blowing up. She's getting a lot of attention in the fishing community, and I thought it would be awesome to have her on the podcast talking a little bit about what it's been like the past few months since she really got into her channel. Natalie, thanks so much for being on the podcast.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
So before we really get into it, how's the holiday season been treating you?
The holiday season is good. It's definitely a busy time of year, but kind of a transition period, in terms of fishing from open water to ice fishing and things like that. And been spending time with family, so it's been a good few weeks.
Awesome. Yeah, I saw you had the one ice fishing video out. We, unfortunately, in Ohio, have not had the chance to go ice fishing yet. We've been sitting at like 36 and rainy for the last 3 weeks. It's been miserable.
That's about what we have here right now. I think it's upper 30s and rain. So any snow that we had is melting right now, and I worry about the ice, but it should be good here again soon.
Awesome. So how did you actually first get into fishing?
Yeah, that's a good question, and one that I always struggle to answer. I've been interested in everything outdoor related since I was a kid, including fishing, but nobody that I grew up with, which is kind of crazy to say because I'm from Minnesota, but nobody really that I knew fished. So I only did a handful of times growing up, and I always really loved it, but didn't have much opportunity to do it. And I really got into fishing, kind of seriously about 6 years ago. And it was through somebody that I met when I was living in Chicago, who was actually a muskie fisherman. So my real introduction to fishing, other than a couple times as a kid, was going for muskies in northern Wisconsin. And again, that was about 6 years ago.
Wow. Yeah, that's kind of similar to how I am too. Nobody in my family fishes. I'm in a town that isn't really fishing heavy, so it was just meant to be, I guess, right?
Yeah, it's crazy how that happens. You definitely get bit by some kind of bug, and for me, it was like once I started, I knew it was going to be something that was going to be a big part of my life.
And so you immediately already talked about muskie, which I feel like that's kind of what you're known for. Is that your favorite fish species?
It is, yeah. The more I fish, I've been fortunate to have had a lot of opportunities to fish different species now, but I think part of it's that was the first fish that I really targeted, so they're always going to have a special place in my heart for that reason. But there's just something about the challenge of muskie fishing. I mean, they're known as the fish of 10,000 casts. They're really hard to come by, and I love kind of the reward that it brings when you actually get to catch one. So I think, muskies are definitely my favorite fish right now, and I don't see that really changing. But I do like to fish for other things too.
Yeah, you've been doing a lot of traveling recently. The Shimano crew's been sending you out. Has the saltwater fishing compared to muskie fishing?
Yeah, I've had the opportunity to fish saltwater quite a bit over the last 5 years or so too, or at least, a couple times a year. And I do love it. I mean, the ocean is quite a beast. You never know what you're going to catch out there. And those fish, even, small ocean fish, they definitely have a lot of fight to them. The ocean's a harsh place to live. So, I love fishing saltwater. I'd say kind of tarpon and bonefish have been my favorite experience. So I definitely hope to continue to do more of that. And I'm actually going to Central America to do some ocean kayak fishing for the first time. And that's just going to be a few weeks away. So I'm looking forward to that too.
Oh, no way. That sounds pretty crazy.
Yep.
Very cool. So your YouTube channel, it's pretty young, less than a year old from what I was looking at with your oldest video. When did you decide to start filming your fishing trips?
So I decided, let's see, I'm going to try to do the math here. But yeah, I decided to start my channel probably, like 2 days before I actually posted my first video. So I think it was February of last year. I've always liked, documenting things and taking pictures and things like that. And I've always had an interest in film, but didn't have much experience with it. But truly, I came across through Instagram a fishing YouTube channel this winter, And it completely blew my mind. I didn't even know, to be honest, that YouTube was a thing. Like, I'd of course heard of it and everything like that, but I didn't know that YouTubers existed. I had no idea that people were filming fishing and putting it on YouTube. And I saw my first video, and it was seriously within about a week that I was like, I'm gonna try this. I'm gonna start doing it. So I was lucky that I already had a camera. And the next time I went out ice fishing, I filmed, literally created a YouTube account and downloaded it to my phone because I didn't have it. And yeah, within like a few days, I had my first video up. So it happened really quick.
That was actually one of my questions was, are there any channels on YouTube that you watched that kind of got you inspired to start fishing and filming?
So the short answer is I really don't watch a lot of other YouTube videos like right now. And partly it's like just kind of time related because I kind of want to be out there. But, you know, Robert Field, who I know that you've spoken with in the past, his was one of the first channels that I came across. You know, I came across people like, you know, Flair and AP Bassing and those types of things. They have a really big following, so they always came up. But Blacktip H, I mean, definitely all the big fishing YouTubers I've come across from one point in time to the other. But some of the most, to me, you know, inspiring YouTube channels have actually been non-fishing related too. It definitely kind of gives a different perspective and shows how much you can actually do through YouTube, and that's pretty exciting to me.
Yeah, I remember one of your videos was a travel vlog style. So obviously the outdoor personality doing travel vlogs, just another way to capture what you're doing.
Yeah, I have a lot of interests, and I think that kind of comes across in, you know, social media and stuff like that. But I'm into pretty much everything, and yeah, I have to say, actually, my biggest kind of creative inspiration with all of this has always been Anthony Bourdain. I've just always been a really big fan of him from his shows like, you know, No Reservation and Parts Unknown, and also his books and things like that. So if I had to pinpoint to kind of one inspiration, he would definitely be it. Even though it's not fishing related, it's kind of the style that I hope to be working towards.
Absolutely. So let's jump off of fishing then for a second. And you talked about Anthony Bourdain. What's your favorite food then, if we're going to go that route?
Oh, you've just opened up a big can of worms.
Yep.
I love food. I'm really curious about everything, and that includes like people and cultures and things like that. So food's a big part of it. I have Greek heritage in my family, so a lot of what we grew up cooking in the home and things like that were Greek food. But I love cuisine from all over the world. I think it's a really just kind of interesting way to experience different places by trying the food. So, I mean, Italian, Cuban, Greek, Japanese, you name it, I probably enjoy it.
I'm Greek too, so I was appreciating the spanakopita you were cooking up on Instagram the other day. That was awesome to see.
You saw that? It's the best.
It's
the best spanakopita in the world.
And it's so easy to make too. My mom does it sometimes. I love it.
That's awesome. Yeah, my yaya and papu taught us well when we were growing up.
That's really cool to hear. The first Greek person on the show with me. I appreciate it.
Awesome. There's not that many Greek fishermen, but we're holding it down.
There is one channel I follow that's out in Greece. That's I can't remember his name right now, but it's actually pretty interesting. There's some beautiful fishing to do out there.
That's cool. I'll have to look that up. I have family in Greece, and I was there last summer, and this was before the YouTube channel, but I got to actually go out with one of my, well, we call them cousins, but you know, it's probably like a fourth cousin or something like that. And they took me out to do some squid fishing just for a few hours in Greece. And I didn't catch one, but a few were caught in the boat, and that was a really cool experience. And I hope to be able to get back in the next couple of years to film some of that.
It's awesome. Yeah, Greece is beautiful. We were able to do a family trip out there, like 7 years ago now. Don't even really remember a whole bunch of it, but definitely planning on getting back out there.
Very cool.
So are you filming your trips as a way to inspire others to fish, or is it more about just you enjoy creating the videos?
Yeah, you know, there's really a lot of reasons that I film and just create content in general. You know, part of it, really, it started just for fun. I decided to see what it was like to make a video. It was always kind of something I was interested in. So I started just for fun, but it definitely became clear to me fairly quickly that it was, you know, a platform that I can use to, you know, share things and to spread messages that I want to spread and things like that. So part of it is definitely to inspire people to fish, but I think a lot of people ask me, is it to get more women specifically into fishing? And that really isn't my main goal. But what I want to do, because I don't think fishing is necessarily something that everybody is going to be interested in.
Yeah.
But really, one of the main things that I want to do with my channel is inspire people to feel more empowered to do whatever it is that they're into. So if there is a woman out there who wants to get into fishing, I hope to inspire her to feel like she can go out there and do it. And men for that matter. And even if it's other things like, going back to school or starting a new career or something, I want to encourage people to kind of get out there and try. Because one of the main things with my channel that I hope comes across to people is that I'm not an expert. I've been fishing for about 6 years, but a lot of the fishing that I do, I'm filming it like the first time that I ever try it, whether it's fishing for a new species or a new body of water or something like that. So I really want to demonstrate to people that you don't need to have all the answers. You don't need to be an expert. You can just kind of get out there and try things. So that's definitely one of the main messages that I hope to be sharing through my videos.
And that's interesting because one of my follow-up questions to that was the fact that this is like a heavily male-based profession. So I was just curious how you thought you'd be influencing women or younger girls who are watching your channel. But do you think that being a woman in this profession is more challenging, or do you think it's like another way to gain viewership? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think it's twofold. There's certainly things that come easier with being a woman in the fishing industry, and there's a lot of things that come harder too. There's definitely a novelty aspect of it. I know a lot of people will comment on my videos like, can't believe there's a girl fishing. I clicked on it, when I saw this was a girl. So there are people that will be interested to watch a first video because there's less females out there doing it. But I think this is definitely a generalization, but I think to gain a certain level of respect for women in really every male-dominated industry, it can be harder being a woman. We've made a lot of strides, of course, in modern day, but I think that, again, having people kind of take you seriously, some women will have to work a little bit harder at, again, in fishing and within other industries too. And I've spoken to, there's a lot of female fishermen in the world, and been able to meet a lot, in my personal life and through social media. And it's something that we all, I think, can agree on. We can definitely turn heads, but, showing that we're in it, for the right reasons, it can, I guess I'd say, yeah, it's twofold, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I completely understand. I feel like you've done a great job to this point. You've grown a pretty formidable subscriber base in a very short amount of time. All the comments are super positive. Everybody just seems to enjoy the fishing videos.
Yeah, and that's something I have to say that overall I've been really taken aback by how much positive feedback there is, not just for me and my videos, but for all the other women who are doing it out there. I get a lot of times parents saying that their, young girl is interested in fishing, and it's great to see, other female role models, myself and others out there doing it. And there's definitely been a lot of positive feedback from me and others, which is really cool to see.
And I'm sure that's inspiring you also to make better content as well.
Absolutely, it is. I definitely started this just for myself, but again, seeing kind of the other people that are watching it out there, sometimes it blows my mind. People will say, hello from South Africa, we love what you're doing. And it's like, it takes me back a few times, I'd say at least a couple times a week, like, wow, this is pretty incredible that I can be connecting with people from, all over the country and all over the world.
Certainly. So let's talk about 2018. Were there any big highlights from this year now that it's almost over?
Yeah, there's a lot of big highlights. So 2018 was the year that I really transitioned into being an independent fisherman for the first time. The last 5 seasons, the seasons before this one, I was truly always fishing with somebody else, and in fact, always fishing with a man or two. So this was the first year that I decided that I was able to start fishing alone, and it was a scary decision. And I know there's a lot of people fish alone, so it's certainly not something that's that That's that amazing. But for me, it was. I decided in March to buy a kayak, and this was winter here in Minnesota. But I decided to buy a kayak and go down to Illinois to kayak fish for the first time. And of course, I decided to kayak fish for muskies for the first time. And I have to say, I was kind of scared, but I had the idea and I couldn't get it out of my mind. And within a couple weeks of thinking about it for the first time, I found myself leaving after work in the dark at 5 p.m. on a Friday to drive, I think it was like 10 hours down to Illinois through the snow to go fish alone for the weekend. And I didn't really know what to expect, but I just had this feeling that I had to give it a try. And in Illinois at the time, the lakes had just unfrozen, so there was open water. And I caught a muskie my first time out. I think it was about 4 hours into the day. And it was a really, it was a cool experience. It was definitely an accomplishment, but it was also, it set a lot of things in motion for me. And it was definitely an empowering moment where I realized, it's probably the first time that I really, really felt like I could say I was a fisherman. I would always say I was a fisherman, but it always kind of came with this asterisk because I was always kind of having help or doing it with other people. But it was the first time that it really, proved to myself that I knew what I was doing and I could do it alone. And that definitely changed my entire year. And I have to say, I struggled for many, many months after that to boat another kayak muskie. It took me about 6 months to get my second one. But it was a cool moment, and it definitely got things moving for me for the year.
Well, muskie, I mean, they're not an easy fish to catch. I still haven't even caught my first muskie. I feel like your muskie is my steelhead, where I can, at this point, I'm only able to catch steelhead when I'm going out with someone, fishing with someone's like helping me along. I'm still trying to find that first fish, just going out by myself to the river and netting a steelhead.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I fished steelhead for one time, but it was with a guide out in Washington, and I did not get one. And it was like, oh, that fish is so high on my bucket list, and I definitely want to do that more. I totally understand the struggle.
Yeah, well, I mean, anytime you want to come out to Ohio, they're running pretty well right now, and my buddy's really good at fishing for them, so he'd be happy to take us out.
That would be awesome. I'd love that.
So what about ice fishing then? Was ice fishing something that you've always done, or was that new for you last year?
Ice fishing is brand new. Last year was the first time. In fact, I wrote a little blog post about it. Yeah, I truly never done it until last year, and I liked it a lot. I put it kind of in a different category of fishing. To me, I think it's just that I personally I don't know, take it quite as seriously, I guess. Even though there's a lot of really cool ice fishing out there, I've always done it just kind of like as a pastime for fun, or in the last year, I should say. So I started last year. I love winter. I love like ice and the frozen lakes and everything like that. So going to Mille Lacs last year was a pretty memorable experience, just kind of getting up there. It's a big lake in Minnesota, something like, I don't know, 20 miles across or something like that. So it's a big lake, and kind of getting up there at sunrise and taking the snowmobiles out. It was a really exciting experience, and we caught some walleyes that did pretty well. But yeah, ice fishing is definitely something I've only done now maybe like 10 times or a dozen times. But I hope to be able to do it more this year. I've only been out 1.5 times this year. I was out for like an hour, and then I did a day. And caught some panfish, some crappies and things like that. And I hope to do some bigger things, more walleyes and like lake trout and things like that this year, but not something that I have a ton of firsthand experience in yet.
Yeah, I feel like ice fishing is just more of a social kind of fishing. You get a few buddies, you go out, sit in a heated tent, and just kind of talk crap, stick some ice rods in a little hole, and just mess around for a few hours. It's definitely a weird kind of fishing, but it's fun. It's something that I've been experimenting with in the last year too, so I'm pretty new to it as well.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because a lot of people who are from the South or from different countries or things like that, they'll comment on some of my videos like, how do you ice fish? I can barely fish, in the fall here. It must be so cold. You must be so tough. And I'm like, oh no, it's really, really cush. Like once you get the ice house up, you're like, I usually bring us a hot drink. You get to delayer. You get to like eat food and have fun. To me, it's definitely kind of that, exactly what you said, just a social time. And I know, there's a lot of pretty intense sport fishing ice fishermen out there. So definitely don't want to take away from it. But my favorite way to experience ice fishing is definitely in that more kind of fun, low key social way.
Yeah, we don't wanna offend anyone on the
Yeah.
podcast here.
I'm sure when I catch my first lake trout through the ice, I'll feel a little bit more different, a little bit differently about it. But
Oh yeah,
definitely just a fun pastime for now.
lake trout are lake trout and steelhead really are my two nemesis. Lake trout though, I've never caught hook and line. I worked out in Yellowstone for 3 months. Worked with the National Park Service. We were basically just removing lake trout from the Yellowstone lake because they eat the native cutthroat. So the most lake trout that I removed from the lake in a day myself was 2,200, but I've never caught one hook and line.
Whoa.
Yeah.
So you're due then.
Yep, I'm way overdue. I had one hooked up, came off, and that's got to be a trip that I do this 2019 coming up. That's the goal.
Definitely. Yeah, I have not got one either, so bucket list for sure.
So, what are your big plans for 2019? Do you have any trips already planned out?
Yeah, there's a few things in the works. Well, most notably, I mentioned this briefly earlier, but I am actually going with Robert Field. I kind of booked it separately, but I'm going to Los Buzos in Panama. So
No
that will
way.
that'll be my first kayak fishing saltwater excursion. And that came about in kind of a funny way. I had three different people suggest it to me in like different ways, and I just kind of kept hearing about it, and finally I was like, okay, let me Google this, let me figure out what everybody's talking about. And as soon as I saw it, I mean, to me, a roosterfish has been pretty high on my list for a really long time, mainly because I just think that they look so cool. And so when I saw the opportunity to get down into Central America, which I love, and kayak fish in the South and have a chance at, Cubera snapper and rooster fish, it was like, okay, I'm going to make this work. So that's something I booked actually like 6 months ago, really when I was not even thinking about making YouTube videos about it. So I'm doing that. And then, yeah, a handful of other kind of down south trips coming up, some personally and some with other, fishing companies, Shimano and other things that I have relationships with. And then hopefully a lot of time up here too. I've been traveling a lot recently, which I love. I love traveling, out of the country. I love traveling, within the US, but I also really like being home and up north too. So hoping to do some more kind of ice fishing and up north things this year as well. I just started doing some open water smallmouth fishing on a river that's not frozen around here on the Mississippi, and that was a really fun experience. I caught a bunch of fish, and I'm gonna go out there a few more times. So I'm gonna try to just kind of experience a little bit of everything.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's the way to do it, right?
Absolutely.
So actually, it was last summer I did the angler tour, which I know I mentioned to you when I reached out about the podcast. And I ended up catching 60 species, fished the entire eastern U.S. So I mean, I think road trips and traveling, it's just the best way to experience a variety of fishing. It's awesome too. Just driving around, you get to see all the sights instead of flying out, and you don't get to take all your gear if you fly. I love road trips.
Yeah, and I think that like speaks to a lot of people when they ask what it is that I love about fishing. Of course, catching the fish and that kind of gratification that comes with it, that's at the top of the list. But for me, it's like the holistic experience. I love meeting new people. I love the nature element, the travel element. I think that there's just so much that goes into the overall experience of fishing. And the hook set and landing the fish, that's only to me a small part of it. So travel is definitely a great way to experience fishing. And yeah, I'll be doing a lot more of that hopefully over the next year.
And my trip was inspired by Robert Field, who we've brought up a couple times now, and he was on the podcast a few episodes ago. Was he one of the reasons you got a kayak? Was he a guy that you saw and then you were like, wow, I have to do this, or was the kayak totally separate from him?
It was totally separate. I actually didn't know who he was till after the kayak. I was kind of in my own little world until after I like started making YouTube videos, and that was after I got the kayak. The kayak thing came about almost out of necessity. I'd done a fair amount of kayaking. I did a kind of an extensive sea kayaking trip in Alaska several years ago, when I've always kind of kayaked here and there for fun. And really I was faced with that decision that I wanted to fish independently, as I mentioned earlier, but didn't necessarily know how to do it. So my first thought, of course, was, do I buy a boat? But for a few reasons, mainly just resources, it wasn't going to be in the cards for me. And I live in an apartment in a city, so don't really have a place to store a boat, even if I could get my hands on one. So I started looking at other options, and I don't really remember how I initially kind of heard of kayak fishing. I don't know anybody personally that does it, or I didn't at the time, but I'd seen it, on social media and things like that. So I really just kind of up and went and got one. And I truly didn't, I had never talked to anybody who had kayak fished when I, was driving down to Illinois to do it for the first time. So it wasn't until I really kind of dove in and had done it for a little while that I started connecting with people in the community. And that's something that I'm really just starting to do, but there's so many people out there, and it's such a, great way to kind of add to my experience by learning from other people and things like that. So yeah, he wasn't the initial inspiration or anything like that, but I've definitely been learning things from him and through his videos over the last few months.
And you mentioned the community aspect of it. I feel like the kayakers are a super tight group, but I mean the fishing community in general. I'm sure you've seen this in your travels, how willing people are to host you, to help you out with fishing trips, to, cover some of your charges for you, things along those lines.
It's unbelievable. I've just had such a positive experience overall from the fishing community since I've been involved in it. And there's so many people within the community that, like you said, they really want to help other people catch fish. And it's something that I don't know if it's unique to fishing, but I think most of us can agree that catching a fish is amazing, but sometimes it can actually be more fun to help somebody else or to, witness somebody else catch a fish. And that's been one of my favorite parts of muskie fishing since I started, is the team effort of it. With most of the times that you catch a muskie, somebody else nets it for you. And you that kind of camaraderie and that relationship that you have with somebody, that you get to, experience your highest highs and your lowest lows with those people. So that community aspect is something that I've always really enjoyed. And yeah, now that I've been traveling a lot with fishing, I feel like I have friends all over the U.S. In fact, many outside of the U.S. that if any time I ended up in a city or in a state, I would probably be within driving distance of somebody who would love to host me, to take me fishing. And there's a lot of people that I would love to host here in Minnesota. So it's a cool community. I've had a great experience with it, and it definitely makes the world feel a little bit smaller the more people that you meet through fishing.
That's awesome to hear. So we're approaching time, but I'm going to hit you with one more question. I feel like I know the answer, but what's your favorite season?
Oh my goodness. I'm surprised you think that you know the answer, because I don't know the answer. So this is kind of a cop-out. I'll give you an answer at the end, but I will say, I've joked about this for many years. Every start to every season, I say that the upcoming season's my favorite. Like, love, beginning of winter, I'm like, winter's my favorite. It's magical. There's snow on the ground. I say that with every season. But if I have to choose, it's the fall. I was born in the fall, which is part of it, but I think it's just a really special time of year. For fishing, it's my favorite because the muskies are big and fat and hungry, so I love that. And I just kind of love the changing seasons and the fall color and the crisp air. So that's my favorite.
I would have figured it was winter with the Natty up north,
Yeah.
All the winter posts.
Yeah, it's a 4-way tie for first. I like everything. But fall and winter.
I love the positivity. So that's all the time we have for today's episode. You can find Natalie on Instagram and YouTube as Natty up north. And Natalie, thank you so much for being on here. It was a pleasure talking with you.
Thank you. It's been fun.
Thank you guys again so much for listening to this week's episode of the Fishing Intelligence Podcast. Make sure that you go leave positive ratings and reviews on Google Play, Spotify, and iTunes. As always, I'll catch you next week. Fishing Intelligence, a fishing improvement podcast for the modern angler.